Thank you. Thank you so much, Yuki. Good afternoon, good morning to all of you. I'm not much of a morning person, but InnerSource Summit has gotten me all boosted and riled up. And I'm happy to share what do we mean when we talk about inner source as a culture and how can you implement this inner source as a culture. Now, Yuki has already introduced me, so I will skip the basics. But I'm based out of India. I work at Gartner. These are some of the basic things. But I would like to add one more key thing that wasn't there in the introduction, which is why I'm connected to inner source deeply. And it actually goes beyond my job at Gartner. See, before Gartner, I worked in small startups and small size organization. And to be honest with you, inner source as a term isn't that much popular among the startups and small size organizations. In fact, the organization that I worked in, nobody knew about inner source as a term. Interestingly, when I came to Gartner and I learned about inner source, my instant realization was that it was already happening. We were already following the inner source principles. We were sharing code, learnings, and collaborating at a level that was enabling us to deliver quality software at a much faster pace. However, the situation across all enterprises is not that good when it comes to inner source. In the Gartner Software Engineering Hype Cycle for 2025, we have pushed inner source down to the trough. And for those of you who don't know much about how the Gartner hype cycles work, the trough of disillusionment is a position that comes when an innovation profile has passed the hype and now the actual value is getting measured. From here, some profiles will reach to slope of enlightenment and will become a mature practice, while other profiles will die out. So almost all profiles have to go through this position. For example, you see software supply chain security there as well. But it is quite different in terms of software supply chain security. We expect it to get mature in the next 2 to 5 years. And given the trend that we have seen after publishing this hype cycle, that proves it as well. However, in case of inner source, we are constantly seeing a decrease in adoption in terms of inner source. In fact, it looks like that the hype will eventually die out because and only a handful organization will be adopting and implementing inner source, but inner source won't have a larger adoption that it must have. Now, what is the it is also supported by our multiple surveys as well. For instance, we did a developer experience assessment survey where we asked developers how much they are satisfied with the support for inner source practices within their organization. The result was only 33% developers are satisfied or extremely satisfied with the support that they're getting for inner source practices. Interestingly, the same survey also points out that when it comes to collaboration within teams or collaboration across teams, then 75% and 42% developers are satisfied or extremely satisfied, respectively. This is intriguing and confusing at the same time. Inner source actually enables collaboration. But when we are looking at collaboration and inner source separately, then there is a big difference between numbers. And why is it so? Based on my interactions with clients and interactions among open source communities and other communities as well, what I've found is that inner source is often perceived as an intermediary step to open source contribution and creation. Now, I'm a big time proponent of open source contribution. I think it is a healthy practice and everybody should do that. But let's face the fact, not all organizations are interested or have the resources to contribute back to open source. So this is resulting when organizations are not interested or doesn't have the ambition to contribute back to open source, they don't feel the need to implement inner source as well in their organization. But is it really true? Is inner source just an intermediary step to open source contribution and creation? I don't even think that it is just sharing code. I don't think if an enterprise has a sharing code repository, you can call them that yes, they have implemented inner source. Inner source is much more than that. While it is based on the principles of open source, it is actually about sharing assets, codes, standards, knowledge, learning that ultimately enables openness and collaboration. So when we look at inner source as a culture, it is more about openness and collaboration rather than just having a shared code repository. And this is where from you should start. Start by setting up a clear vision what inner source means to you. And we think and we recommend that that vision should be inner source is a culture that actually enables openness and collaboration and ultimately leads to better developer experience and developer productivity. From here, the things will come, setting up inner source champions, inner source community, starting with projects, doing a pilot, all those things will happen eventually, but start with setting a very clear vision to the entire organization. And that vision is inner source is a culture that fosters openness and collaboration. Now, once you have initiated inner source as a culture, you need to support this culture. And I'm going to recommend you two key practices to support inner source. One is platform engineering, and another is community of practice. Let's unfold each of them one by one. Starting with platform engineering. Platform engineering is the discipline of building and operating self-service internal developer platforms. Each layered platform is managed as a compelling product to optimize developer experience and productivity. That is just the definition. The premise of platform engineering is actually about reducing the cognitive load over developers by offering them self-service platforms. Developers should not feel the need to separately set up things like infrastructure. They don't need to focus on setting up GitHub version control systems or building CI/CD pipelines. Platform engineering offers the platforms that can automate these things. So one of the key component of platform engineering is reusable components. When we talk about reusable components, we are not merely talking about reusing infrastructure-related components. It's also about reusable code components. For example, we have seen that some organizations are adopting JavaScript, the plain vanilla JavaScript as a programming language to develop the front ends of web application rather than using any JavaScript framework or library. Now, what they are actually doing is they are offering a platform that offers these reusable templates in JavaScript. So software engineering teams can retrieve these templates, build things on top of it, and deliver high performance, high security front ends. This is much better than managing different JavaScript frameworks that gets really complex with a large enterprise scale project. And it's not just limited to code as well. Platform engineering is enabling the easier adoption of generative AI. For example, in case of Verizon, they realized that their distributed delivery teams are actually overwhelmed with the technical complexities of generative AI, embedding security, handling compliance, designing architecture was very difficult for these teams. To solve this challenge, Verizon formed a cross-functional enablement team that offers self-service platforms. This team comprised of members from software engineering, security, risk, and finance, and enterprise architecture as well. These self-service platforms were offering reusable components, easy access to large language models, embedded security features, and governance so that developers or delivery teams can easily integrate with generative AI and use it for their application development. As a result, the marketing copy generation that was earlier taking 15 days is now just taking 2 days. Similarly, we recommend that platform engineering or enablement teams should manage the inner source components as well. Set up or establish platform engineering team that will set up these self-service platforms with embedded governance, establishing automated processes that will enable developers to contribute to inner source easily, and at the same time making it easier for development teams to retrieve inner source components through self-service platforms. The next vectors that I'm going to focus upon is community of practice. Community of practice has existed for years, but is really emerging in the age of AI. You may ask why? Because we are right now shifting to a new form of software development. Nobody knows about it much. So teams are coming together and sharing what is working for them and what isn't working for them. Community of practice can really help drive in the vision of inner source. Teams can share their challenges, victory, and learning as being a part of inner source as a culture. If teams are also experimenting with something, for example, they're using AI to increase reusability or using AI to identify the right inner source components, then they can share this across the organization so that other teams can also adopt the same. We also call it the social aspect of learning among development teams. Now, there are a large number of benefits of community of practice, both in the short term and in the long term. I would like to focus on two key benefits here. One in the short term, community of practice enables the sharing of learnings and experiments done by different teams. And these experiments and learning will eventually become standards that can be followed across the organization. So it promotes standardization and coordination. In the long term, it also gives a strong foundation to build interpersonal relationship among different team members. One of the biggest challenge with inner source is developers lack the confidence and trust to share their code with outside team members. When they are part of community of practice, they get a safe space to communicate, and this results in building trust among team members, eventually giving them the confidence that they need to contribute to inner source and let the other teams see their work as well. Now, we talked about how should you initiate inner source by setting up a vision. We talked about how should you support InnerSource by platform engineering and community of practice. Now let's focus on sustaining InnerSource. And to sustain InnerSource, you need to incentivize your developers to contribute to InnerSource. There is no other way to motivate your developers than giving them the right recognition. And it has to go beyond monetary benefits. We see badge systems really work well. Some organizations implement gamified techniques like hackathons or leaderboards. For example, Fannie Mae, one of the known organizations, and we have a published case study on Fannie Mae, how they have been successful with implementing inner source and contributing to open source. They actually have a gamified technique. They use a badge system. They have these leaderboards that are visible to all. And through these leaderboards, developers get organization-wide recognition for contributing to inner source and open source. These recognitions motivate more developers to join the inner source culture. Now, we focused on both, all three parts of it. We focused on initiating the inner source culture, supporting the inner source culture, and sustaining the inner source culture as well. But you also need to get the buy-in from leadership to do all of that. We are talking about a cultural implementation here. So you need to demonstrate the impact of inner source with time. And the demonstrate when has to be at the business level. We have expanded the scope of inner source at the cultural level. So we cannot just talk about reusability. We need to focus on how inner source is enabling better developer experience. How easy inner source has made the job of developers in doing their job. We need to focus on how quickly we are able to deliver quality software. How much reusability has increased because of inner source, how much duplicity has decreased, how much code standards we have been able to establish because of inner source. We also need to focus on talent attraction and retention. One of the great things about inner source is when developers are part of something that gets recognition across the organization, they feel that they are doing something bigger than themselves. We need to map this out with talent retention in the organization and demonstrate that impact to the leadership. And lastly, try all of these small things to demonstrate the overall business impact of inner source. With that, I'm coming to my recommendations now. The first recommendation is very clear. Implement inner source as a culture. It's not just an intermediary step to open source contribution. Again, I'm a big proponent of open source contribution, but keep inner source as a separate thing because it is very valuable to enterprises even if they don't need to contribute back to open source. Sharing code is just one part of it. Think of sharing assets, standards, knowledge, and learning that ultimately lead to openness and collaboration. Support the inner source culture with platform engineering and community of practice. Platform engineering will enable sharing of code and assets. Community of practice will enable sharing of knowledge and setting up standards. Third, incentivize your developers for contributing to inner source. This has to go beyond monetary benefits. Give them recognition across the organization and promote the sharing and reusability, the two key principles of inner source. And lastly, measure the impact of inner source as a culture on talent, developer experience, software delivery and quality, and the overall business impact. Now, before I end this session, I would like to reiterate one thing. Inner source as a shadow of open source isn't growing. So it's not just limited to organizations who are adopting inner source. In my view, the inner source community also need to demonstrate this message. Inner source is not just a shadow or a technology implementation. It is a cultural implementation that enables openness and collaboration among software engineering teams. And this is the requirement of the AI native era. Thank you so much. Have a good day.